Much to my mother's disappointment, Blackjack was one of the earliest games I can remember my father teaching me. He called it 21, he promised we weren't betting, Cheerios didn't count, so on and so forth. So I wanted to make it in Unity. What's really cool about doing this in Unity is it lets us tackle some, well, arrays, objects, classes, a lot of basic stuff that you're going to want to understand, and it lets us do it with a thing, with a game, with an end product that you will have to show off. Everything I do in this, all the assets and all that, they're completely free for you to use and mess around with. I also have the code linked in the description with those assets. I'm just going to walk you through how to make a, well, Blackjack game. I think it's fun to build and it's even better to play. Let's become rich on virtual money that we create in a game. If that is possible. Anyways, let's get going. Here I am in Unity, and this is going to be a 2D card game, so 2D. And then to name this game, I'm very creative with names, I'm lying, but I'm going to call this Blackjack video so I know what it is for me. And let's hit create. And here we go. But, all right, to get started, I think I have hid some assets that hopefully will yes, all right, I hid them. Yes, great. So here they are. These assets are free open source assets. They will be attached in the description. Kenny board, I'm sure you are aware of, the game board they have created. If not, you should check out their whole store. And then these fonts as well. I've gathered their CC comments. They'll be linked in the description. So I'm just going to go ahead now and make a folder called sprites, because these are going to be our game board pieces. Instead of taking the time to import all of it, I know that this is a card game, so I'm just going to take, and they have a lot of really cool stuff in here, right? Game pieces, so much to use. All we need, though, is the chips and the cards. So I'm going to dive into my sprites folder, and then I'm just going to go chips, cards, and pull them here. But, and with that set to go, the other thing I wanted to add is some fonts. And I have that here. And perfect. Those are linked in the description. So there we are. Let's go ahead now and start by adding a background canvas. Like so. I'm going to want a display that's 16 by 9, good standard size, good widescreen display. Screen space to camera. Zoop, drag over my camera. That's fine. We want to scale with screen size. And then standard HD is 1920 by 1080. And that is looking good. And this canvas, I actually am going to title background canvas because I am only using it for the background image, which will be the tabletop. And you might think, but Kurt, what did we import for a tabletop? We didn't, but I'll show you. Let's go ahead and UI image. Boom. And what we're going to use actually is one of our cards, just like a green poker table, big green card. Not this one with the rings, just this one with the edge, the border. Whoops. Image. There we are. It's teeny. Now, zoom. So the first thing we're going to want to do is double check the aspect ratio you have here. There's my teeny green square. I'm at 4:3. You want to be on 16:9, right? Because that is the aspect ratio that we gave to the canvas, 1920 by 1080. So now with that set, let's work on making sure this can fill our space. Back to our image. I'm just going to title it back image. And then the position, we need to flip it 90 degrees. You can tell the card's vertical here, so it doesn't stretch out in a weird way. And let's see. Something like this, maybe. Get in there. Whoops. And maybe go for the year 2020. Let's take a look. I am liking that. It gives it a nice edge around the entire table. Cool. So that's our table set up. Now, next up, we need another table, right? Or I mean, another canvas for everything on top of the table. That way we can leave our background canvas alone and not have to mess with the background or mess up the background. So I'm going to go ahead and go UI, canvas. I might just call this main canvas. Great. And we want the same thing here. There we are. And let's go ahead and pick out some cards. So I am going to use the blue cards because I think it looks really nice on the table. And I'm going to use red cards for buttons. So I'm going to go ahead then and start with our buttons. And this will be our deal button right here. So we should add on main, I'm going to right click, or I could just click game object, UI button. There we are. And I'm going to say deal BTN. So we know what we're dealing with. But ching. And I was going to use this. Now it's right here hidden behind everything. Let's go ahead and give it a order. Ooh, let's make sure our canvas has a sorting order. Main canvas, there we are. We want to make sure that we sort this to be on top of everything else. So it already has UI here. But we don't want this to be default. Add sorting layer. And I'm going to say HUD for heads up display. While we're here, we might as well put cards or something like that. And I'll put cards right here and then HUD for heads up display. So main canvas, we need to have a sorting layer. Boom. There we are. Here's our deal button. And let's get this a bit more. I want it down here. Probably more exact. Whoops. Rotate. There we go. And that is perfect, at least for my button, right? So with 126 height, 126.5 height, 275, and then for X, negative 630, Y is negative 370. Make sure you rotate it to have it spin like this, and then the text. And let's set this up on 75. We also want to spin the text. I think that's negative 90, yep. And overflow. And this is looking okay. So what I'm trying to do here is center it. Yeah, there we are. And then what you're seeing there is the hit box. Well, the click box. So this is looking good. Let's just say negative 66 on left, 80, negative 63, and 78 on bottom. What I'm going for here is it to have full coverage of the center of this, which it's a little more on the bottom, but there we are. Perfect. So 82 there. Now let's go ahead and select a font that's more fitting for our game style. And remember, I have these all linked in the description. So I'm going to go click. I already know what I want. I cheated. I went and found something that's Creative Commons or free to use. And it is absolutely a casino font. Let's take a look. Yes, I was really liking this one. Casino 3D filled, and then I'm going to make it an all white. I am loving this. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and duplicate this. We will need 3 other buttons. So since we're here, let's make life easier on ourselves. Duplicate and duplicate. What we're going to need also is a hit button. I'm going to creatively say hit on it. And let's just move that up a bit. Maybe that's more to my liking. And then this will be stand. Negative 90? Yeah. So this is for Y, negative 230, negative 90, and then deal was right at negative 370. Oh, for stand, let's go ahead and fix our text here. Stand. Perfect. Fine, I might lower this just a teeny bit for stand to fit how I would like it to. Awesome. And of course, you might want to choose a different type of card for your buttons. I was liking that one. Another one that's really easy to read and still kind of our red color, because I was going to have the player's cards be blue, we can make use of everything that way, is the red plain one, or at least with this square in the middle. And it's really easy to switch these out. Actually, for hit, might as well mix it up. I might do that one for hit and maybe for stand too. Cool. So we have our buttons in place. Let's see real quick how they look. Oh, I really like that already. And now the next item we're going to want to add is our cards. It's a card game after all. So I'm going to use this sprite. Obviously use whatever you like, but I was liking this one. I'm just going to click, oh, still in game mode. Click and drag. And there we go. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and create an empty and name it player. And then I'm going to create an empty and name it dealer, where we will just store the cards for organizational purposes. Okay. And I'm going to name this card 1. And let's take a look at its location right now. Let's zoom in a bit to get a better view. So I know this is the center because of the camera, and I'm going to want it a bit towards the edge for the cards that we're going to use for hitting. So let's say, for me, it's -1.2 and -3.1. Yeah, I like that, and those are kind of standardized. So now I'm just going to duplicate, and I'm going to creatively name this card 2. And let's just do the opposite. So instead of -1.2, let's do 1.2. Then we know they're evenly spaced. Maybe a bit. Let's just put it at 1, maybe. Yeah, that's better. Okay. And now we have those 2 cards. I'm going to now duplicate both of them. Let me drag this down. I'm holding Shift to select both and duplicate. And then I'm going to grab these original ones and actually put them in this empty player, or put them under this empty player object. And for these 2, I just want to drag them up. And let's make them the opposite here. Instead of -3.1, +3.1 should do it. Yeah, I am liking that as well. So, and we can just name these same thing because they're going to be with in the dealer. So card 1 for the dealer and card 2. Awesome. So now let's start. I'm going to hit Control S to save actually. Let's start working on some of the code aspects since we have the foundations of the game on the screen. I'm going to put a card that will represent the deck as a whole. And if we don't like this later, we can hide it, but we'll also attach code to it. So deck. And I'll just kind of move it into place here-ish. Don't let the board look too busy. And 0 maybe. I'd be a bit more towards the dealer, 0.5 maybe. All right. And so this is going to represent the deck again. And let's now add a script to it. As always, creative. And just to make sure we're organized, create, right click, create folder. Maybe. Folder. Scripts. Drag that up. And here we are. So first thing we're going to want to do within this, I'm going to shrink it down a bit, is we need to have a way to access all of the sprites we will use for our deck. So public sprite card sprites. And then while we're just up here, we might as well add the values that we're going to be using. So int, and both of these are arrays. This doesn't need to be public. We're just going to have it assign the value to our cards, so we don't have to manually type all those in. Okay. So I'm going to save all of this. There we go. Let's kind of finagle this over here. Okay. And now we should have access. Where's my deck? There we are. I'm going to put it down here kind of with main canvas. And yep, card sprites. So we're actually going to leave this 0 for now. We want to make sure to lock the inspector because I'm going to actually just close that. I'm headed over to the card sprite. And first I'm going to drop in the back of the card just so we have it in here. It's probably not going to be used, but that way we can have something at the 0 index. And then I'm going to go suit by suit all the way up to 10, because then the ace, king, queen stuff are, I lied. I want ace at 1. So I'm going to drop it now, 1. Now 2 to 10 is great. Drop it on card sprites and it will just fill it in for us. And then jack, queen, king. And you'll notice I'm putting in order of your values, right? So these numbers actually match up with their numbers, and there's the possibility of ace being 1 or 11. And now after the king here, we want 2 through 10. Oh, nope. Almost again, we want ace of diamonds. Now we want 2 through 10. Jack, queen, king. There we are. And again, we're going to want the ace of hearts, 2 through 10. And then jack, queen, king. And finally, spades, ace of spades, 2 through 10. Jack, queen, king. And this is exactly what we want, 53 in this order, just as I have done. Now, I'm going to make sure to hit save this, and let's go take a look at our code. With our game nicely laid out, let's get our buttons up and running, up and usable, right? So when we click deal, well, we actually deal. So we have our deck script here, and we could add the button listeners to this script itself. It's neater, honestly, if we have a separate script. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and add a new script and actually a new object just to keep things tidy. I'm going to create empty here, and I'm going to call this game manager. Boom. Now, the script I'll add to this is game manager. What's kind of cool about this script, though, is when we do this, boom, see how it gets a nice little icon? Because the game manager, well, is actually an established thing. Oops. All right, game manager into scripts. Double click, double click. There we go. And here we are. So for a game manager, we again want to have access to our buttons. So up here at the top, I'm going to go ahead and add all the buttons. And let's go ahead and add in a bet button. We haven't put that on the screen yet, but we'll need it. Awesome. And hit save on all that. And so I don't forget, let's fill these in right away. Game manager. I'm going to sneak this guy up here, actually. Might as well reset the transforms, but nothing's there anyways. All right. So deal button. Deal, hit stand. I'm going to lock inspector. Hit deal, hold shift, click all 3. Oh, it didn't work. Should have known it was too good to be true. All right. There we are. Here's our 3 buttons, unlock, inspect. And I have those ready to rock. So now we want listeners added to each of them. We're going to do that in the on start, because you can't add the listener until we're sure the game has started up. That's when we are free to add a listener. Putting a comment, and let me get this code in there and I'll explain. So if you have red under it, you are doing it right. Now I'm just going to get the same idea, same type of thing for each button. So I'm just going to do a copy, Control C, and Control V to paste for these because I'm lazy. This will be hit. And this will be stand. So we don't have these functions built out yet. And that's why they're underlined in red. We could, if you hover over them, it will try to get us to do this automatically, right? Private, void, throw, yada yada. Here, let's go ahead and try one of these out. There we go. And so now we'll add this in for us. And we can fill these in a sec. Kind of cool, huh? I'm going to actually stick these, though, Control X under my update. Actually, we're not using update yet. I'm just going to replace it. There we are. On stand, on hit, on click. I'm going to put them in order as they appear. All right. There we are. I'm just liking this order. Oh, wait a minute. On deal. Okay, so when we click deal, we want to, well, deal out these cards, right, from our deck. So that's what we need to put in here. Well, let's take a look at our deck script, and ta-da! Now we can add some items to this. For instance, we want to be able to get values or create values for our cards. Remember, we used a public sprites array, so we did put in the array of sprites, but the values, I was lazy. I didn't want to type in them all myself, but that is simple enough. I'm going to actually, we don't need a void update. I'm going to steal this shell, though. Get card values. Okay. And so I'm going to start with an integer. I'm then going to use a loop to loop through the length of the card sprites array because I know that contains all the cards. We're going to use the number 13 because there are ace will be 1 and 13 will be a king. We'll have to adjust the score of that. Let me get this code in there and I'll walk through it with you. All right. So this is going to keep track of our current index within the array. So as we're looping through the cards, we should add that up here. The current index that we are at in the sprite or the value, so in the deck. Started at 0, started at 1. It doesn't so much matter because you need to have it be 1 right here. Now, what are we doing first? Well, I'm looping through to assign all the values to the cards. We could have done this manually if we wanted to create a big array and make sure we always have them in a certain order. I didn't like that. It seemed a bit brutish, so I coded it up. All right, now what this does, so we're going all the way up to the amount of cards, which will be 52 cards, and so num's going to be equal to up to 52, but we don't want our cards to have a value of 52, and that's where this comes in, the modulus operator. And what this returns is, so whatever number this represents, I is going to be equal to 0 at first, but it's going to go all the way up. It's going to go all the way up to the length of card sprites, which is 53, so it'll go up to 52. Now, 47, for instance, we don't want a card to equal 47. But what we do is divide it by 13, right? And whatever the remainder is what number will be. So if we're on card 37, what 37 is, or 27, what 27 is, if we divide it by 13, well, that equals 2. What's the remainder? The remainder is 1. So num would equal 1. And at 27, if we go look at our deck over here, 27, boom, is going to be an ace. And we're setting ace's default to 1. So that's how that's actually going to be assigning our value. And this is what this is doing. So obviously a queen doesn't have a value of 12 or a jack of 11 or a king of 13. So we need to make sure, hey, if their actual value here is more than 10, we want it to default it to 10. And that's what this does. Then we assign that value. And we are building a deck. We're going to want to be able to shuffle and deal out this deck, of course. Let me first, though, save up here. And we'll be tackling that shuffling and dealing out of the deck in the next part of this series. If you are on your way to making something awesome, make sure to comment and tell me about it below. Also, make sure to hit like, make sure to hit subscribe. It gives me warm fuzzies and makes the world a better place. But other than that, yeah, onward to Blackjack awesomeness. We got to make sure we shuffle good because, you know, you don't want people to cheat or anything. Eh?